Man is made by his belief. As he believes, so he is. Bhagavad Gita. There is a moment in every human life when the outer world seems to announce defeat. A moment when circumstances become so convincing, so overwhelming, that even the strongest heart begins to wonder whether everything has already been decided. Yet these ancient words remind us of something deeper, something the world cannot measure and no situation can erase. You are not made by your past. You are not created by appearances. You are made by what you continuously accept as true within yourself. And perhaps this moment, the very season that seems like the ending, is actually preparing the stage for the greatest comeback of your life. Many people misunderstand what a comeback truly means. They think it means recovering what was lost. They believe it means returning to a former version of themselves. But life does not move backward. A true comeback is never about going back to who you were. It is about becoming someone you have never been before. It is about rising with greater wisdom, greater faith, greater understanding, and a deeper awareness of your own power. What appears to be destruction is often preparation. What appears to be delay is often divine rearrangement. And what appears to be failure is often the birthplace of a new identity waiting to emerge. Perhaps you have known disappointment. Perhaps doors have closed. Maybe people underestimated you. Maybe you even began to doubt yourself. There are nights when silence feels heavy and mornings when hope seems distant. But I want you to understand something that most people never realize. Your life is not being controlled by the opinions of others. Your destiny is not written by yesterday's mistakes. The unseen world within you is always greater than the visible world around you. Long before any transformation becomes visible, it begins quietly inside consciousness. Think about the seed beneath the ground. To the eye, nothing seems to happen. There are no flowers, no branches, no visible signs of life. But beneath the surface, unseen forces are already at work. The seed is not dead. It is preparing. In the same way, there are seasons in life when you may appear stagnant to others. People may think your best days are behind you. They may judge you by appearances. But appearances are temporary. Invisible growth always precedes visible results. What matters is not what others see. What matters is what you continue to nurture inside yourself. You must stop treating temporary conditions as permanent truths. A storm is not forever. Darkness is not forever. Seasons change because life itself is designed for renewal. Yet many people imprison themselves by constantly rehearsing old disappointments. They relive failures again and again, unknowingly planting those memories into tomorrow. But your mind was never designed to become a museum of painful memories. It was created to become a workshop of possibilities. You were given imagination not to replace suffering, but to create a different future. This is why your greatest comeback begins the moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "That do I choose to become now?" That question changes everything. Because circumstances may influence your emotions, but they do not define your identity. Identity always comes first. When you change how you see yourself, the world eventually adjusts to reflect that new vision. The outer world is slower than the inner world, but it cannot permanently resist what is consistently impressed upon consciousness. There are hidden conversations taking place within you every day. Sometimes you are not even aware of them. Quiet whispers saying, "I'm too late. I missed my chance. Others are better than me. Maybe life has forgotten me." But these inner words become instructions to your experience. They shape your emotions, your expectations, and ultimately the direction of your life. And this is why mental discipline is not merely positive thinking. It is sacred responsibility. You must become aware of the stories you tell yourself when no one else is listening. Imagine what would happen if you began speaking differently within. Imagine waking each day with the quiet certainty that your story is not over. Imagine carrying yourself with the confidence of someone who knows that unseen forces are already arranging opportunities. Imagine feeling gratitude before the evidence appears. Imagine becoming so aligned with the vision of your future that present circumstances lose their power to discourage you. That is where transformation begins. Not when conditions improve, but when consciousness changes. The world has taught people to worship evidence. It says, Believe after you see. But every great transformation begins with the opposite approach. You believe first. You become inwardly convinced before the visible world agrees. And that inner conviction, sustained with patience and faith, becomes the invisible cause behind future events. This is why hope is not weakness. Faith is not fantasy. Imagination is not escape. These are creative forces entrusted to every human being. And perhaps what you call a setback today is not punishment at all. Perhaps life has simply removed what no longer belongs so that something greater can emerge. Perhaps the delays have strengthened your character. Perhaps the disappointments have prepared your heart. Perhaps the loneliness has taught you to rediscover your relationship with yourself. Because sometimes life removes external support so that you may discover the infinite strength that has always existed within. And once a person begins to discover that hidden strength, something remarkable starts to happen. They stop waiting for permission from the world. They stop measuring themselves by appearances. They begin to understand that the greatest victories are born in silence, long before the crowd sees the results. And it is at this point, when a new self-concept starts quietly taking root, that the real journey toward your greatest comeback truly begins. Because there is a secret about identity and reality that very few people understand, and once you discover it, nothing about your life will ever be seen in the same way again. There is a secret that has remained hidden from many people, not because it is difficult to understand, but because the human mind has been trained to search outside for answers that have always existed within. Most people spend their lives trying to change circumstances without realizing that circumstances are shadows. They chase results while ignoring the source. They attempt to fix appearances while neglecting the consciousness that produced those appearances. But every great transformation begins with a profound understanding. Life does not simply happen to you. In ways far deeper than you have been taught, life responds to the image you hold of yourself. This is why two people can stand in the same situation and experience completely different realities. One sees obstacles and feels defeated. The other sees possibilities and feels inspired. The difference is not in the conditions surrounding them. The difference is in their inner identity. Your self-concept silently influences everything. It shapes the opportunities you recognize, the decisions you make, the energy you radiate, and even the expectations you carry into each day. Without realizing it, many people have accepted identities that no longer serve them. They call themselves unlucky. They identify with failure. They define themselves by old mistakes. Then they wonder why life continues to mirror those assumptions. But you are not your past experiences. You are not your temporary emotions. You are not even the version of yourself that existed yesterday. Every day, consciousness offers you a new beginning. Every moment carries the possibility of choosing again. And the greatest comeback does not begin with changing the world. It begins with changing the story you tell about yourself. For what you repeatedly affirm inwardly eventually becomes familiar. And what becomes familiar begins to feel natural. And what feels natural eventually expresses itself in your outer experience. Many people wait until they feel confident before acting differently. But confidence does not arrive first. Confidence is born through repetition. It is cultivated through faith. It grows through consistency. A mountain is not moved by one drop of water, but by countless drops over time. In the same way, your new identity is built through repeated inner agreement. Day after day, thought after thought, feeling after feeling, you are constructing either limitation or freedom. You are either reinforcing old beliefs or nurturing new possibilities. This is why you must become careful with what you entertain in imagination. Imagination is not merely fantasy. It is one of the most sacred gifts entrusted to human beings. Every invention, every achievement, every transformation first existed as an unseen image within someone's mind. Long before the visible world changes, there is always an invisible blueprint. The future enters consciousness before it enters experience. Yet many people unknowingly misuse this creative power. They imagine failure before it happens. They rehearse arguments that never occur. They expect disappointment and then feel surprised when life reflects those expectations. Imagine instead living from the end of your victory. Not forcing it. Not struggling. simply becoming familiar with the feeling that your breakthrough already belongs to you. Imagine carrying yourself as someone who knows their season is changing. Imagine waking with quiet gratitude instead of anxious fear. Imagine seeing yourself not as someone trying desperately to become successful, but as someone who already possesses value, peace, and purpose. Because life responds differently when your identity changes. Understand this carefully. Your greatest comeback is not something you chase, it is something you allow. You do not force flowers to bloom. You provide the right conditions and nature does the rest. In the same way, your responsibility is not to manipulate every detail of the future. Your responsibility is to cultivate inner harmony, to nourish faith instead of fear, to feed hope instead of doubt, to become emotionally aligned with the life you desire. Results have their own timing, but inner alignment creates the conditions through which miracles enter ordinary life. There will be moments when appearances attempt to discourage you. There will be days when nothing seems to change. The mind will whisper that it is pointless. Old fears may return. Familiar doubts may knock on the door. But remember this: a seed does not dig itself up every morning to check whether it has grown. It trusts the process. Growth often happens silently. The greatest transformations are usually invisible before they become undeniable. Patience is not passive. Patience is faith stretched over time. And perhaps one of the greatest dangers is comparing your journey to someone else's timeline. Comparison steals peace because it focuses attention outward. Every soul unfolds differently. Some flowers bloom in spring, others in autumn. Yet each fulfills its purpose in perfect timing. Do not measure your value by the speed of your results. You are not late. Life has not forgotten you. There are seasons when roots are growing deeper beneath the surface. What seems like delay may actually be preparation for something greater than you currently imagine. Begin speaking to yourself differently. Become the guardian of your inner atmosphere. Let your mind become a sanctuary instead of a battlefield. Replace harsh criticism with understanding. Replace fear with expectation. Replace the language of defeat with the language of possibility. Because the voice you hear most often eventually becomes the voice you believe. And the voice you believe shapes the person you become. Remember that no one outside of you can grant you permission to rise. No circumstance possesses authority over your spirit unless you surrender that authority. You are not waiting for the world to approve your comeback. You are waiting only for yourself to fully accept who you truly are. And the moment that acceptance becomes natural, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your energy changes. Your choices change. Your relationships change. Doors that once seemed closed begin to open in unexpected ways. Opportunities appear where none seemed possible. And as this new identity starts to become more real than the memories of your old limitations, you will begin to discover another truth, perhaps the most powerful truth of all. There is a difference between wishing for a new life and actually living from the consciousness of the person you are becoming. And understanding that difference changes everything, because it reveals why so many people remain trapped, while others experience transformations that seem almost miraculous. And that mystery is where the next stage of this journey truly begins. The difference between wishing for a new life and living from the consciousness of the person you are becoming is subtle, yet it changes everything. Many people spend years hoping, praying, and waiting, but deep within themselves they still identify with the old story. They desire abundance while feeling like victims. They ask for peace while secretly expecting disappointment. They speak of greatness while emotionally remaining attached to fear. And because consciousness always expresses itself through consistency, life continues to mirror the identity they have silently accepted. The outer world can only reveal what the inner world has first embraced. This is why your greatest comeback does not begin when circumstances change. It begins when you stop negotiating with old versions of yourself. There comes a moment when you must lovingly release the identities that no longer belong to you. Not with anger, not with regret, but with gratitude. Because even your mistakes have taught you something. Even your struggles have shaped your wisdom. Even your failures have prepared you for the strength you possess today. Nothing was wasted. Every experience has contributed to the person you are becoming. Too many people carry guilt as though it is a life sentence. They revisit old chapters and punish themselves for who they used to be. But wisdom understands something beautiful. A person who has grown is no longer the same person who made those mistakes. Why should you imprison yourself inside memories that no longer represent who you are? The river does not apologize for flowing forward. The sunrise does not seek permission to appear again after darkness. Nature itself teaches renewal. And if life continually renews itself, why should you deny yourself the same grace? There is something remarkable that happens when a person finally stops fighting their past. Energy that was once wasted on regret becomes available for creation. Attention that was trapped in painful memories becomes free to envision new possibilities. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, hope returns. Not the fragile hope that depends on circumstances, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that your source is deeper than appearances. This confidence does not shout, it does not seek validation, it simply knows. And this knowing becomes your anchor when storms arise. Because storms will come. There will still be moments when life seems uncertain. There will still be unexpected challenges. But the difference now is that you are no longer building your identity upon temporary conditions. You are building it upon something deeper. You understand that circumstances are visitors. They come and they go, but consciousness remains. The world around you may shift, but the world within you can remain steady. This is why mental discipline becomes one of the greatest acts of self-respect. Not because you are denying reality, but because you are choosing which reality deserves your attention. Fear will always present possibilities. Doubt will always attempt to tell stories. Yet you have the power to decide which voice receives your agreement. Thoughts are visitors. They knock upon the door of awareness, but you are not required to invite every thought inside. You are the guardian of your inner world, and whatever you consistently welcome eventually becomes the atmosphere in which you live. Imagine waking each morning without immediately surrendering your mind to yesterday's worries. Imagine beginning the day by remembering who you are becoming instead of replaying who you used to be. Imagine carrying within yourself a sense of expectancy so strong that disappointments lose their ability to define you. Because expectations shape perception, and perception influences experience. A person who expects good begins noticing opportunities that fear would have ignored. A person who expects abundance behaves differently than someone who secretly expects lack. And these differences, though invisible at first, eventually become visible through the results they produce. Many people are searching for signs. They ask, when will I know that things are changing? But often the first sign is not external. The first sign is internal. You begin reacting differently. You begin feeling peace in situations that once disturbed you. You stop chasing approval. You stop fearing rejection. You stop measuring your worth by temporary outcomes. You discover that your joy is no longer dependent upon circumstances. And this inner freedom becomes one of the clearest indications that transformation has already begun. There is tremendous power in gratitude, not because gratitude magically erases problems, but because gratitude shifts your focus. It trains the mind to recognize blessings instead of limitations. It teaches the heart to trust instead of fear. A grateful person sees possibilities where others see barriers. Gratitude opens doors that complaining can never unlock. It creates harmony within consciousness, and harmony attracts experiences that resonate with its frequency. Do not underestimate small changes. Great mountains are formed grain by grain. Oceans are filled drop by drop. Transformation is not always dramatic. Sometimes it arrives quietly through new habits, new thoughts, and new ways of seeing yourself. A single decision repeated consistently can alter the course of an entire life, and perhaps the miracle you seek is not hidden in some distant future. Perhaps it is hidden inside the choices you make each day, inside the conversations you have with yourself, inside the faith you choose to maintain when evidence has not yet appeared. Because there comes a sacred moment when a person stops asking whether their comeback is possible and begins living as though it is inevitable. They no longer move with desperation. They no longer beg life for permission. They walk with quiet certainty. They understand that what is meant for them is not pursued through fear, but received through alignment. And once this certainty settles deeply within consciousness, something extraordinary starts unfolding. Not only does life begin to change, but the person themselves becomes almost unrecognizable compared to who they once were. And as this new version continues to emerge, another realization begins to dawn upon the heart. You discover that your greatest comeback was never merely about success, wealth, recognition, or proving others wrong. It was always leading you towards something far more profound, something capable of transforming not only your circumstances, but your entire understanding of who you truly are. And it is within that realization that the final and most beautiful chapter of this journey patiently awaits. And it is within that realization that many people finally discover a truth they spent their entire lives overlooking. Your greatest comeback was never merely about recovering what was lost. It was never about proving doubters wrong, gaining applause, or showing the world what you could accomplish. Those things may come, but they are only shadows compared to the treasure that was being formed within you. The real miracle was always the transformation of consciousness. The greatest victory was never outside of you. It was the person you became along the journey. There are people who achieve success and still remain prisoners within themselves. They possess wealth but carry fear. They receive recognition but continue seeking approval. They appear victorious in the eyes of the world, yet inwardly they are exhausted. But there are others who have discovered something far greater. They have learned that peace is wealth. Faith is power. Self-knowledge is freedom. And once these treasures are found, external blessings become expressions of inner abundance, rather than substitutes for inner emptiness. Perhaps that is why life sometimes allows seasons of struggle. Not because you are abandoned, but because certain lessons cannot be taught through comfort alone. Strength is revealed through resistance. Compassion is deepened through pain. Wisdom grows through experience. And faith becomes unshakable when it survives moments that once seemed impossible. Looking back, you may realize that the very things you once prayed to escape became the things that awakened something magnificent within you. Think about how different you are now compared to the person who first entered the storm. There was a time when fear controlled your thoughts. There were nights when uncertainty stole your peace. There were moments when you questioned your worth and doubted your future. Yet somehow, despite everything, you are still here. You survived. You learned. You grew. And perhaps the person who once begged life for answers has become someone who now walks with deeper understanding. Perhaps the person who once searched desperately for strength has discovered that strength was quietly developing all along. Never underestimate what a healed spirit can accomplish. A person who knows their value moves differently. They do not chase because they understand that what belongs to them arrives naturally. They do not live in panic because they trust the wisdom unfolding through life. They do not measure themselves by comparisons because they recognize that every soul carries a unique purpose. Such a person becomes difficult to discourage because their confidence no longer depends upon circumstances. Their foundation rests upon something far deeper. And this is where many people misunderstand abundance. They think abundance begins with possessions. But abundance begins with consciousness. A poor mindset can exist inside a palace, and a rich spirit can exist during humble beginnings. Abundance is the ability to feel grateful before receiving. It is the ability to remain hopeful when evidence is absent. It is the capacity to expect goodness without anxiety. And strangely enough, when this inner richness develops, life begins responding in ways that appear miraculous to others. You will notice that opportunities start appearing. New ideas emerge, relationships improve, doors open unexpectedly. Synchronicities begin to feel almost impossible to explain. Yet what others call luck is often the natural consequence of alignment. You have changed, and because you have changed, your experience changes with you. The outer world begins reflecting the order that now exists within. And slowly, what once seemed impossible becomes ordinary. What once felt distant becomes familiar. And what once appeared to be a dream becomes part of your everyday reality. But perhaps the most beautiful transformation of all is this. You no longer live with fear of losing everything, because you understand that your true source was never outside of you. Circumstances may change, seasons may come and go, people may enter and leave, yet the creative power within you remains untouched. And because you know this, life no longer feels like a battle against uncertainty. It becomes a journey of continual unfolding. Each day becomes an opportunity to express more love, more wisdom, more faith, and more gratitude. There will still be challenges. There will still be moments that test your patience. But now you understand something that changes everything. Temporary conditions are not final conclusions. Setbacks are not declarations of defeat. Delays are not denials. The darkest night has never prevented the sunrise. Winter has never stopped spring from arriving. And no matter how difficult your past has been, life itself continually whispers the same message through every season of nature. Renewal is always possible. So stand tall, not because the world has guaranteed easy roads, but because something greater has awakened within you. Walk forward with quiet certainty. Speak to yourself with kindness. Guard your imagination as though it was sacred, because it is. Refuse to define yourself by old stories. Refuse to surrender your future to yesterday's memories. Become faithful to the vision planted within your heart, even when no one else understands it. For every masterpiece begins unseen, and every great comeback begins with an invisible decision. And one day, perhaps sooner than you imagine, you will look back upon this season and smile. You will remember the doubts that once frightened you, the setbacks that once discouraged you, and the moments when you wondered whether you would ever rise again. And with gratitude in your heart, you will realize that nothing was wasted. Every tear, every lesson, every delay, every challenge became part of the sacred path that led you here. Because your greatest comeback was never waiting somewhere in the future. It began the moment you decided that your past would no longer have the final word. And from that moment forward, life itself began responding to the new story you courageously chose to believe. And that story, written first within consciousness, and then expressed through experience, became the living testimony that no darkness is permanent, no dream is too distant, and no soul that continues to believe, imagine, and persist with faith is ever truly defeated. For the power that creates a new life has always been closer than you thought. It has always been within you,